It's the tawdriest of tales, and it's engrossing the United States. It's the trial of Ghislaine Maxwell. She was friend and consigliere to the late Jeffrey Epstein. And she's on sex trafficking charges, and it's kicked off in Manhattan. And the prosecution has wasted no time in casting Maxwell as a partner in crime to the mysterious financier, labelling her his best friend and right hand. For her reaction to this and much, much more, I'm joined by US commentator Kosha Gada. Kosha, welcome to Credlin. The details of Ghislaine Maxwell's alleged activities are quite extraordinary. Does that explain why so many Americans and people here in Australia are fascinated by this trial and the story of Jeffrey Epstein?
Partly. Good to be with you, Cory. So, look, Ghislaine deserves her right to due process, just like anybody else being tried in the American justice system, from Kyle Rittenhouse to Jussie Smollett, whose trial also began today. He, of course, was the television star, who's been alleged to have perpetrated a hoax, potentially, and that he's fighting that. So I think, all these cases have just grasped the attention of people. In this case, the attention is definitely grasped of Americans and people around the world. I think ultimately for two things. One is probably not our purest motivations. There are so many salacious details undoubtedly as part of this, and it sort of appeals to the voyeuristic side of human nature, for better or for worse. I think the other bigger reason, though, when you think about it, along with those other trials that I mentioned, is people see this really as a test, another test, of whether the system is acting and performing fairly and still belongs to the people. Because we know that a lot of very, very prominent, very, very powerful people have been embroiled or at least involved in some way with Ghislaine and Jeffrey Epstein's operation over here, and people want to see if any of them are going to be implicated and how the process is going to unfold. So I think that's really what's gripping the nation, and it's only actually advancing by the fact that the media coverage of it is actually very, very, very sparse, and a lot of people are finding that quite frustrating.
Yeah, there's many things that are frustrating about the media, particularly when it comes to, I guess, protecting one of their own or protecting the wealthy and powerful. We want to see behind the curtain. But what about more news from New York, I should say, that CNN host Chris Cuomo, now it's been revealed that he played a much bigger role than we all previously thought in assisting his brother, who I will remind viewers at home was disgraced former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. Well, he was advising him about how to respond to sexual harassment allegations, and according to documents released by the Attorney General there, Chris Cuomo used his journalism sources to find out about what future claims were coming up against his brother. Little wonder that, many of the Republican movement and the centre-right over there in America are suspicious of CNN and being partisan players, isn't it, Kosha?
Yes, I think this is yet another illustration and another test of what we just talked about, and that framework through which people are increasingly evaluating whether the system and establishment institutions, in this case the media, is working fairly and whether there is accountability. Look, I think, with that said, I will say that there are a lot of people who don't begrudge on a personal level a brother helping a brother. Blood is thicker than water, after all. I think what's at issue here, though, is did he improperly use his influence and access as an employee of CNN in a manner that benefits him and his family? Ultimately, this is a matter for CNN. And I think, what people are going to watch is what they do about it and how they go about it. So they've launched an internal review. How rigorous is that going to be? Are people going to find it satisfying, the rigor and what they find out of that? And then as they continue their inquiry, what are they going to do about it? And will there be any accountability? And I think ultimately the arbiters of that will be the viewers of CNN and their audience. And if they find that the rigor was not there or the accountability was not proportionate to any impropriety that may have occurred, then we will probably see that in the ratings. As you know all too well, that's the currency of this business. And we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it'd be fascinating to see whether CNN actually cover it, or some of the sympathetic networks like MSNBC and so forth over there, because they do like to buck in and protect their own. Kosha Gada, I'm out of time, but I really appreciate you joining me on Credlin tonight. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Cory.